was whimpering. Ah, yeah, like a baby whimpering. And in some communities, it was a combination of groaning and whimpering. So, the reason why we have to blow 3 tashrats, this is before Musaf, and 3 tashats, and 3 tarats, right? Everyone follows the abbreviation I just used, what that means, is because the Torah requires tekiah, trua, tekiah 3 times, but since there are 3 versions of what a trua is, so this is a little confusing. The trua of the Torah can either be what we call trua, it could be what we call shvarim, or it could be what we call shvarim trua. So whatever it is, we got to do it 3 times. So that's how we get 3 tashrats, 3 tashats, 3 tarats. Which means, if you would have been in a shul 2,000 years ago, right? The time of the Beis Hamikdash, or after the Churban Beis Hamikdash, it would be very different than today. You would hear shofar, you might just hear tekiah, trua tekiah 3 times, and that's it. Or you might just hear tekiah, shvarim tekiah 3 times, and that's it. In other words, different places did different things. They didn't do all of it. Or you might hear tekiah, shvarim, trua tekiah 3 times, and that's it. You wouldn't have heard all the variations. The rabbi, in fact, we even know who gave us this takana. The rabbi who was mitaken, that we have to incorporate all of these variations. 3 tashrats, 3 tashats, 3 tarats, is Rabbi Abahu, who was a Talmud of Rav Yochanan. This was a 1st century Palestinian Eretz Yisrael Amora. And he enacted that we incorporate all of the different variations in order to be yotzei for sure the meaning of the crying sound. Now it's interesting, the notion of crying, the notion that the trua is a crying sound is a well understood idea, but it's important to note that it's bracketed by the tekiah before. I mean, whatever your trua is, it is bracketed by a tekiah before and a tekiah after. Now the Svarim tell us the tekiah sound, which is long and unbroken and confident, is an expression of simcha. The broken sound, whether it's shvarim, trua, shvarim, is the pain and tsar. And this really encapsulates the notion that on one hand, on Rosh Hashana, we stand in judgment and we tremble before God. And we have to do tshuva, which also requires regret and remorse. But that expression and that feeling of fear and trepidation has to be bracketed on both ends with an underlying joy in serving Hashem, being in Hashem's nation. In other words, it's not only sadness, it's bracketed with simcha, and the simcha becomes dominant because the simcha precedes the broken heart and the simcha comes after the broken heart. Now I just want to mention one thing. After the Amoraim of the Gemara comes the period of the Gaonim, the great Gaonim, which lasted for several hundred years, till around the year 1000 approximately, and then you get to the Rishonim after that. So the last of the Gaonim, who's considered to be the greatest of the Gaonim, his name was Rav Hai Gaon. Hai is not a name we use today, but he was Rav Hai Gaon, and he was truly one of the greatest of, maybe the greatest of all of the Gaonim. And Rav Hai Gaon has an interesting tshuva about the takana of Rabbi Abahu. And he says, how on earth could uncertainty be introduced in a mitzvah that is done regularly every single year? I mean, you're telling me there was uncertainty as to what was the trua that the Torah requires. In some communities, it was the shvarim trua, groaning and whimpering. And in some communities, it was just the groaning, which is the shvarim. And in some communities, it was only the trua, which is the whimpering. And there was uncertainty. And therefore, some people did it this way, and some people did it that way, and some people did it that way. And each one would not be yotzei if they were doing the wrong one. And Rabbi Abahu came along and said, oh, we got to do everything to be sure we're yotzei the mitzvah. So what is being stated there? What is being stated is that there were communities that were doing the mitzvah wrong. Now, how do you get a mistake introduced into a system when you're dealing with a mitzvah that goes all the way back to Moshe Rabbeinu? What did Moshe Rabbeinu tell us to blow? And if he told us to blow a shvarim, then how did they get the trua? And if he told us to blow a trua, how did they get the shvarim? And if he told us to blow a shvarim trua, how did some communities go off on shvarim or go off on a trua? Meaning, how does it happen? Now, if it's a mitzvah like Techeles that got lost, for many years the Romans didn't allow us to make that dye, so we literally lost our connection to it. Okay, but it's a mitzvah you do all the time. So Rav Hai Gaon says a gewaldige chiddush, a real interesting chiddush. He says, the Torah itself allowed the different options to develop. It is not the pshat that God gave it one way and somebody made a goof. No, Hashem said, you got to express the shofar on Rosh Hashana through the sound of crying. And it was left to local communities to devise different ways. So if some people were doing shvarim trua, and some people were doing trua, and some people were doing shvarim, it's not a question that some people were right and some people were wrong. These were options, and maybe there were more options. We don't even know. Maybe there were 100 options, but Rabbi Abahu picked 3. Once you're saying options, there are a gazillion options you could have. But when Rabbi Abahu said we should do all the options, he wasn't saying do all the options because we want to be sure we get it right. You got it right with any one of those options, but he wanted there to be unity in Klal Yisrael, so that if somebody walked in your shul from a different city, they would not feel that you're doing a ritual that is... In other words, he wanted there to be, on Rosh Hashanah in particular, he wanted there to be unity and achdus. That's a very, very interesting chiddush, because Rav Hai Gaon is suggesting that the Torah itself allowed for a multiplicity of expression. But be it as it may, the one common denominator of those 3 things is that they are expressions of crying. But I do want to point out that in Sifrei Chasidus, it also points out that there may be a laughing aspect as well. Laughing and crying are not so dissimilar as we might think, right? You laugh until you cry until you laugh. And therefore he says that the sobbing sound of Rosh Hashanah also has a dimension of a laughing sound on Rosh Hashanah. And that kind of expresses what a new year is like in some ways. Putting aside, I don't mean the horrendous thing, who will live and who will die. I mean, that's obviously a major source of trepidation. But even if Be'ezrat Hashem, Hashem gives us life. But any new experience is a combination of anxiety and jubilation and simcha. A new experience. You come to a new yeshiva, or a new zaman, or a new job, or you're getting married, whatever it is, getting divorced even. There's a combination. On one hand, there's a new opportunity here. New things can happen. New brachos. On the other hand, to leave the old and familiar is always scary. How does the saying go? I'd rather have the hell that I know than the hell that I don't know. Meaning, even if the situation is bad, I'm used to it, I know it, that's my situation. So this notion of laughing, crying is kind of a perfect feeling as we stand on the cusp of a new year. A new year is new. Meaning, maybe the building looks the same, you look the same. But in point of fact, we're renewed. We're recreated. A new life is decreed for us. We hope it'll be wonderful and filled with blessings even more than the old life. And sometimes there may be difficulties. We don't know. But it's something on one hand to be very excited about, and that's the laughter, but also to be a little scared that we're leaving the old and familiar and going on a new journey. So the notion of laughing, crying is a very interesting double message in the sound of the shofar. So anyway, I want to wish you all a good gebencht yorah, kasiva v'chasima tova, shana tova masuka, a good year and a sweet year. In fact, one little thing, I want to tell you an interesting issue about, I think I may have mentioned the slichos, I don't know, but let me just repeat it if I said it already. You know, we blow the shofar during Musaf as well, and I didn't have a chance to get to that, and maybe some other time we'll get to it. Maybe on Hashana I'll be having some meals with you, I could talk about it then. But after we blow the shofar during Musaf, we recite a line, Hayom haras olam, Hayom yamid b'mishpat, kol yitzurei olamim. Now if you look at the Art Scroll translation, it means today is the birthday of the world. Today we all stand in judgment before God. So they interpret haras olam as the birthday of the world. Why is Rosh Hashanah called the birthday of the world? Because God created Adam on Rosh Hashanah. So actually Rosh Hashanah is the 6th day of creation. And since the purpose of creation is for Adam, so that's called the birthday of the world. All right, and that's fine, and that's a standard translation. Probably every single machzor you'll look at will translate Hayom Haras Olam as the birthday of the world. But there's a big problem with that. The word haras in Hebrew does not mean birth, it means conception. That's one point. This is the conception. Now, another thing, even the word olam has to be retranslated. Although it is true that in rabbinic literature, olam is used to describe the world or the universe. I mean, the universe as a whole. But in Tanakh, olam does not refer to the world. Olam means eternity, forever. In fact, even the prayer Adon Olam, right? Everyone knows Adon Olam. What does Adon Olam mean? Does Adon Olam mean master of the world? Or does it mean eternal master? See, it's an interesting switch of how we got from temporal to spatial. Meaning we use olam today to mean world or universe, you know, even if you have an expanded definition. Space, we use it for space. In Tanakh, olam is not used for space. It has a connotation of time, eternity. So, if you take harat to mean conception and olam to be eternity instead of world, you get a very nice nuance in the translation, Hayom harat olam. That means today is the conception of the new eternity that we will be facing in our lives. So it's not saying this is the birthday of the world. This is the conception of our reality, meaning it's a pregnancy. Rosh Hashanah is a day in which our reality, so to speak, gets impregnated with divinity. So the phrase is not looking to the past. The phrase is looking to the future. Hayom haras olam. Okay, anyway, have a wonderful Yom Tov.